across the World Wide Web, on your mobile devices, on social media platforms. This is Jambo Radio! www.jamboradio.co.uk. We are multilingual. We are conversational in the languages you best understand. We are Jambo Radio! Jambo Radio, inspiring transformation.
Hello, welcome back, lovers and friends. You're listening to Love on the Stereo with me, your host Holly Min from Swipe Right HQ, and you're listening to Jambo Radio. Happy Friday, everyone. And we already know I'm going to talk about the weather, so let's get into it. Guys, if you're from Glasgow, you know that it was tap-saff today. It was tap-saff weather indeed, and it's still doing it outside. Like, I walked in and there's like this beer hall thing outside and everyone's just looking glorious. Like, where do all these beautiful people come from when the sun comes out? Normally, I mean, I'm not saying anything about the people who are in Glasgow when it's raining, but I'm just saying it looks like a better situation when the sun is up. So thank you for joining us today. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about gender stereotypes, or maybe how can I say it, traditional gender roles, right? We'll get into that. I mean, we're talking like basically gender roles and expectations. I guess stereotypes fall into that, but basically, I know this is a spicy topic, okay, I know, and I'm not trying to get cancelled, so I'll get all my disclaimers out right now. We're going to be talking in the sense of like traditionally male and traditionally female gender roles, right? That's my disclaimer, because I think that's the fairest way to approach this in terms of like comparisons from the past and then comparisons to now, right? That's how I'm seeing it. So whether you're a seasoned dater or, apologies, just like dipping your toes into the dating pool, you've probably noticed that relationships aren't the same as they've always been. So I want to talk about it tonight. So I hope you'll join me. And I guess a lot has changed in the last 50 years, right? There's no, maybe even more, less than 50 years, because obviously with the onset of like the digital dating platforms and all of that has kind of changed, right? So I want to kind of dip into that and talk about, you know, modern society, how it's redefining those roles, or even is it redefining those roles? Are people still carrying on the same traditions? That's what I want to hear from you. So let's get comfy, boys, girls, and everything in between, whatever, and join me for the show. So if you do want to join into the conversation, please do so. You can call the studio directly on 0141 530 2787, or you can send us a WhatsApp message or a voice note on 0745 990 6822. I would really love to hear from you about this topic, because there's so many different camps this sits in, and I'm not worried. Can't beat me. It's fine. If you're on Facebook, you can watch our show live on Facebook as well, but also you can contact us on Jambo Radio Scotland. On Twitter, we are at Jambo Radio 1, and on Instagram, it's at jamboradio.scotland or love.on.that.stereo to speak to myself. And you can also email us at info@jamboradio.co.uk. So please do send us your comments, send us your voice note, send us your disagreements with what I'm saying, and we'd love to hear from you. So you can also download our app on mobile app, which is where apps normally live. It's called Jambo Radio, and it's available in the App Store, and for those of you on the iPhone or also on iOS devices. So again, would love to hear from you about this topic. I was hoping to have a guest for tonight as well to like, you know, go back and forth about a little bit on this. And I think even if you haven't listened to last week's show, I think you give it a re-listen, because I think that there's some things that could be touched on again from last week's show into tonight's show. So let's get into it with a little bit of, I guess, historical context. So what are traditional gender roles? Is it even a thing to say that? I think on a radio show that's quite like African Caribbean centered, I think that we can all agree that there is a specific traditional gender role for males and females in relationships, right? But thinking back to the days when your mom and dad Or even your grandparents when they were dating. Yeah, you might not want to think about it, but see your Grammy and your granddad, they were in the streets and they were in the sheets as well. Do you know what I mean? Because if they weren't, you wouldn't be here listening to my sexy dulcet tones over the radio. So we need to talk about how they were dating as well. But basically, thanks to the patriarchy, I think I can safely say that back when your grandparents were dating, your granddad was most likely in control. Like, or maybe he most likely made the first move. You know, he had the freedom of movement, the financial means, even the community support for him to be able to, like, you know, go find a wife, sow your seeds, all that stuff, right? The list goes on. And obviously, again, thanks to the patriarchy, I'm inferring that perhaps your grandmother wasn't supported by the community. If she was to be like, I'm going to actively seek a husband, you know, I don't think people would be clapping for her or even sending her down the road to be like, yeah, girl, go for it, go get yourself a man. So in fact, if she had even voiced the active want to search for a husband or a boyfriend, it could be that she would be stoned. Okay, maybe that's a bit dramatic, but like, all I'm saying is it was more welcomed for a man to express the need that they want to go out and you know, sow their seed, or whatever might occur in those situations. So I think traditionally men have been the go-getters in the dating world, the chasers, the move makers, right? Because, you know, women just didn't have the means. They didn't even I think quite recently women have been able to have a bank account of their own. So of course she wasn't going to be asking your granddad on a date because she can't pay for it. Do you know what I mean? She probably can't even drive, probably can't afford a car to drive, maybe a bicycle, but she's not going to be riding the bicycle with your granddad on the back. So what I'm saying is, in the past, it's been very clear who can ask who out on a date, what's going to happen on the date, who's going to pay for the date. But now there's a shift, right? I think I read recently that, I think it's in America, don't quote me, but I think it's in America, where this report came out to say that for the first time since records began, and it's not been that long since records began, but long enough for us to be like, that's crazy, women now own the majority of homes versus their male counterparts. So for example, you would find that a 28-year-old woman owns a home and a 28-year-old man does not own a property. So that's the first time that's kind of happened. And it's a big change, you know, if you think of the context of human history and even this short amount of time, to say that like women are now in a position where, even though they were held back for so long, they've surpassed in this one arena. You know, what will it look like in another 50 years? And what does that look like for maybe men or even society who's used to having it a certain way? You know, that person who's been maybe raised to be the one to own the home. What happens when you meet the love of your life and they already own a home? Is that a turn off? Is it a turn on? You know, is it going to rub you the wrong way? I don't know. That's what we're here to talk about. I guess if we fast forward today, I guess that's what I'm saying. How much have those things changed? You know, do people actively seek to find someone who is aligned to the way of thinking, or do they just fall into it? I think last week's guest was an interesting example of that, in terms of like, he kind of showcased a little bit about what maybe a traditional Gambian African man would be looking for, you know, in terms of the woman. I think he said the woman or the wife would refer to them not with their like given name, but with like some sort of like reverence or authority figure name, right? But then the guest then married someone who wasn't from that traditional culture, and suddenly those things didn't matter to him anymore. But are there still people of that age who still seek that I guess reverence from their wife? Also, are there women who are still willing to give such reverence today? I don't know. Call and let me know. And I guess there is challenges and there is opportunities in terms of when you're trying to make a connection in this new world. And I think especially for men, And that's why I would have loved to have a male guest on. So please, if you're a man listening to this, let me know, because I think that the challenges in terms of breaking free from these traditional stereotypes, as I was mentioning about, if you've been raised a certain way and you've been raised to be a provider, make a home and then bring a wife into it, all those things, what is the feelings of you meeting a woman who already has those things? You've only been raised in this one perspective. Are you willing to change that? Does it even come up to you like, has it been a thought to you that maybe the person that you come and meet with is going to be completely different from the image that you have in your mind? Or do you then meet this person and then you have to resent them and then break them down so that you can gain that bit of respect? Because in your mind, respect looks like, I am the provider. What is that like for this? I think society has disadvantaged men a lot in that respect, because I think that as time has gone on, women have had to almost shapeshift into a new cultural, societal norm, right? Whereas they weren't having bank accounts, they weren't having jobs, they weren't owning homes, to now they're doing all these things that their, very near ancestors just did not have access to. So they've almost become a new beast. But for men, this kind of line of line of succession has remained the same for them, right? So they haven't really had to change as much, and so they haven't really had to adapt to any new environments as much, but they're meeting women in a new arena, but they're still of the same mindset. I hope this is making sense, and I haven't just taken on too much sun tonight. But yeah, so what is that like, really, is what I'm saying. Are men who have been raised with one perspective prepared to meet a woman who has seen many different perspectives and is not ready to like bow down to those same gender roles? And if they do, is it a plus or is it a negative? Because I obviously, it's not obvious, but I subscribe to the fact that men and women are very different, in their respective arenas, and you bring two different things together. Some people might disagree with that, and that's fine. But what is it like if one party isn't as willing to perhaps shift their narrative? And honestly, this might be coming off a bit too biased from the female side. Come and beat me, because that's where I am, right? But at the end of the day, if your dad, who you look up to, told you, listen, son, being a man means being a provider, and then you come into a loving relationship where you are not, in fact, providing, how are you shifting? You've not been taught to provide emotional support. You've not been taught to provide all of the things that this new woman who is providing for herself wants from you, right? How are you adapting to that? You've been training almost for a battle that you now are not equipped to fight in, right? Which is it's a real shame. So parents out there, if you're listening and you've got little boys, please, you need to amp up what kind of things that we're training them for, not just training them to be the sole provider of the home, because that's no longer enough. Absolutely, if you are looking for that, that's great, but we need to teach men to more than provide financially. How do you provide comfort to your wife? How do you provide respect, provide support, provide emotional safety, all these things without feeling emasculated because she doesn't need your money? That's domestic violence, whatever. All of those things then boil down into becoming this, well, what can I provide now? Well, you can provide so many more things. And I think that that's what the traditional gender roles fall down at, because there is a space for that. There is a space for tradition and love, but also we're a changing world, right? In so many different respects. So something's got to give. And, men online will shout up and down about, what do you as a woman bring to the table? And I saw this video, which was like, if you have to ask a woman what she's bringing to the table, and you think that only men are bringing something to the table, then go and marry a man. Because really and truly, what do you want the woman to bring to the table? If you can't articulate to say, I want a woman to bring XYZ to the table, but you're just throwing it out there almost as an attack to say, what do you bring to the table? So what do you bring to the table? Is it money? Because me also have now brought money. Now what? You know, now it's a fight. You know, let's move beyond what do you bring to the table. And if that's really important to you, marry someone else who's also carrying the same weight you believe is being brought to the table. And I think there's also a kind of unfairness to, well, actually last week's guest mentioned that when he came to this country, they told him that this country is purely a 50-50 situation, right? And I disagree with that. And I think that as well, in today's world, for example, if you are looking for someone who's like traditionally a woman who's going to traditionally be at home, that's fantastic, right? But what are you asking for in that? Are you asking for a woman to live on the salary that you're providing? If so, what is that salary? Because look, think about the stress you're giving yourself if you approach a woman, you say, I want you to be a stay-at-home wife. Because a lot of men online are like, I want a traditional woman. But what does a traditional man do? Provides wholly financially, right? How many men today in Glasgow are prepared to provide wholly financially, talking about paying for the mortgage, paying for the cars, paying for the holidays, paying for the hair, paying for the nails? It's not the same as what your granddad was getting out of his pocket. Today, that's going to be a lot of money. And unless you're prepared to give that woman a lot of money, please don't be asking for that. And then at the same time, don't be saying women these days are just gold diggers, because you don't have any gold to be dug from. Let's be honest. You don't have any gold. But the truth in that is to say, if now a woman can't stay at home and be fully taken care of, she has to now go outside and work, right? So in that traditional sense, can she still be expected to perform the traditional roles? No, because her role has changed, and so has yours, because now you're not providing solely, you must also now adapt. But I'm not here to be beaten up. I'm here to talk about breaking free of some stereotypes, not all of them, because some things are there for a reason. You know, traditionally we have to respect culture, but I'm just here to talk about, you know, opening the doors to explore some new aspects of yourself, maybe stuff that you've not really examined, or you just outright say you on a list, you know, I want this type of woman, I want this type of man. But can you live in a world where this type of person exists, you know, where you are the sole provider? Can you live in that type of world? Do you make enough money to live in that type of world? And if you are a woman who wants to be a traditional wife, can you live in that world where perhaps your husband isn't making enough money to give you that traditional wife life? Are you prepared to humble yourself into that? If not, then that's when your relationship changes and what you're looking for starts to change, where before you'd be like, love is the most important thing to me. And then now, when you know that actually my dream is to be a stay-at-home wife, love becomes less important because you're now seeking a man who can provide your stay-at-home lifestyle. And vice versa. If you are a man looking for, I don't know, a baddie, right? You're looking for the baddest girl in the game, and she's making more money than you, you're going to have to humble yourself and maybe go for one who's not as bad, who you won't have to, and maybe not compete with, but you won't have to elevate to their level, and because you can't take a baddie from the street and make her not so bad anymore. The way I've said baddie so many times. Listen, let's take a little break, and when we come back, I hope to hear from you, and let me know if you are for traditional gender roles staying, or do you break them up in your own relationships? Do you speak about them? Do you reflect? Do you even consider them when you're dating? Let me know. So we'll be back shortly after this break.
On your mobile phone and on all social media platforms, Jambo Radio.
The excitement is building up as the date for the groundbreaking, first of its kind conference in Scotland gets closer. With 30 employers signed up, 20 plus speakers confirmed, and 500 delegates to attend. Welcome to the #IamBlack conference. The #IamBlack conference is a groundbreaking event focused on unleashing the power of black talent and employer brands in Scotland. Employers from various sectors, including finance, technology, engineering, legal, healthcare, arts, education and public sector will have the opportunity to engage directly with new talents, learn about the changing trends within a diverse talent pool, discover, attract and retain new talents, and build relationships within the Black community in Scotland. The #IamBlack conference is a full-day programme of inspiring keynotes, insightful panel discussions, game-changing masterclasses, and networking opportunities. The #IamBlack conference is on Monday 29th April from 9 a.m. to 4:15 p.m. at the Technology and Innovation Centre in the University of Strathclyde on George Street in Glasgow.
Scotland's Lada is an exciting new festival which celebrates the richness and diversity of Scotland's African and Caribbean food and drink scene. This festival will bring together African and Caribbean producers from across Scotland to offer a vibrant medley of flavours and styles to sip and savour. Scotland's Lada takes place on Saturday 27th April 2024 at the C7 Conference Centre, 100 High Craighall Road, Glasgow, G4 9UD. The C7 Conference Centre is a 15-minute walk from Glasgow city centre. The festival will be in two sessions. Session 1 takes place from 11 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. and Session 2 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. There will be masterclasses from 11:30 a.m. on Spice It Up, African Spice Mastery, and from 12:30 p.m. learn about launching your food and drinks business with Novate Hub. From 4 p.m. it's the rum tasting and cocktail experience with Matuga Distillers and Island Slice. Festival tickets are available now at larderscotland.com. They're £10 each and there's free entry for children under 15 with every adult ticket bought. There's music from DJ Daddy Slaggy, host of Reggae World on Jambo, Radio Scotland, DJ Baron Afrobeats and a host of others.
On your mobile phone and on all social media platforms. Jambo Radio.
Welcome back to Love on the Stereo with me, your hostess with the mostest, Holly Moon. So we're speaking today about gender stereotypes, or rather traditional gender roles, and whether or not they're still relevant in today's dating scene or not. And we were just, talking about whether or not women or men have adapted to the new ways of the world. And I think it's a real shame that men today have been raised traditionally to be strong and silent in their pain. You know, no wonder male suicide rates are so high, because even when men are together alone without women, it seems that they don't actually talk about their emotions. And I think that's where the issue is coming in terms of these traditional roles where men are strong and silent and they provide, and then women can now provide for themselves, so they need you to not be so silent. They need emotional provisions, but men haven't been trained for that as much as maybe they should have in this changing world. But again, by shaking up the dating scene and showing that there's like more than one way to provide and to do things, you're actually making waves and changing society too for a kind of positive way. And, we're chipping away, I guess, at those harmful gender norms that end up hurting men and women, maybe not in equal rates, sometimes in equal rates, but certainly there's something to be said for challenging things that were done in the past, because things were done in the past for a reason. We don't have to continue doing it like that when the reasons no longer exist. Realistically, I think there's like an anecdote about this woman who is, I guess, preparing for some kind of Sunday roast or whatever, right? And she's like tying up the chicken's legs before she puts it in the pot, and then she just stops and goes to her mom like, listen, why am I tying up this chicken's legs exactly? And the mom's like, I don't know, that's how my mom used to do it. So she goes over to the grandmother, and then the grandmother's like, she's like, oh, why do you tie up the chicken's legs when you're about to cook this recipe? And she goes, oh, I used to do that because I used to have a really small pot, right? And then she was like, whoa, that's the only reason? She's like, yeah. And so she came back in the kitchen, told her mom, listen, apparently this like chicken tying thing is only because Granny had a small pot. We have a bigger pot, so we don't need to tie it anymore. And she was like, yeah, I guess, and I think it's a small window into challenging the behaviors that we do just on autopilot for whatever reason. So you could be there and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I want a traditional man, but think about the conditions that made that traditional man. Do they still apply in your life today? If so, fantastic, go ahead for it. And the same with the women. But if those conditions don't still apply, question those things around yourself. And I think that especially in African cultures, there's a lack of, I guess, encouragement to ask. We are raised with this like blind obedience to be like, this is how things are done. You don't question authority. You just keep going, right? And I think that really does stunt a lot of things in us, and even in relationships. Ask the question, challenge. If something is being done repeatedly, there could be a legitimate answer for why it's being done that way. But if it's not, then you could be like, wait, actually, I don't need to do that anymore because the conditions have changed, and you could find a new way to do it, and so forth and so on. So I really encourage you to look into that for yourselves. And if you are a regular, I'll say, this show's been going for a little bit now. I can call you regulars, right? You know that on this show, my battle cry is communication. Communication is key, right? That was my Donald Trump impression. Communication. I think that's terrible. But anyway, effective communication, again, until the cows come home, it is so crucial especially in aspects around navigating this gender, I guess, traditional gender roles. If you don't communicate that maybe your views have changed around it, or maybe this is what your expectations are, you could be burdening your significant other in ways that you couldn't even have imagined. Your dynamic could have changed completely. Like, there could be a man out there listening to this who just really wants to cook and clean around the house, but traditionally he's been told that's a woman's job. But if we examine that and be like, inherently, why is it a woman's job to clean the dishes and to cook? When you look around the world, the most famous chefs are men. So you could infer that actually it's traditionally a male job, but actually when it's taken to the home, it becomes a woman's job. So now there's this example man who's at home thinking, I would make a great house husband, but in his head, he's a traditional man who must go out and work. So now that same man is going to work in an office that he hates. He's coming home to his wife's home-cooked food, which is terrible because he's a better cook than her. But in himself, he doesn't want to be like, God, this food is terrible. I could do a better job. Or, the way that they've cleaned this oven is shocking. I could do a better job, because it's a woman's job, and then that's going to build feelings of resentment. And instead of him to communicate with his wife to be like, listen, I think I could be a better man if I just looked after the home, maybe even the woman wouldn't take that very well, because again, in her mind as well, she could be, traditionally men don't be cooking and cleaning. Sorry, that's weakness in my head. But again, that's something to examine. So that's what I'm saying about men haven't really had reasons to change and adapt, whereas women have had to be forced to, maybe not forced, but certainly because they have more choices, they've been able to expand their minds. And now you can say that there's women who actively choose to be stay-at-home women. There's women who actively choose to be working women. So there is a choice. But I think for a lot of men, that choice is still not there yet for them. And that is a shame. And it's, you could say that the relationship dynamics are being harmed in a situation like that, where the man feels like he must act in this strong and silent way, where that's not really who he is. Because again, the conditions of who he really is have not really changed for him enough to come out and be like, yo, I actually want to be a stay-at-home husband, without judgment from his wife, from his community, from all these different things. But actually, the whole family could be happier for him, happier altogether if he did do that, But again, communication is key. Just have a chat with your wife, have a chat with your husband. Be like, is this the life that you envision for yourself? And if it's not, let's make it happen for you in that way. Be supportive. Communicate in ways that make you feel vulnerable, because I think that in any relationship, if you are not vulnerable, you cannot grow. You can't be comforted, you can't be supported. You know what I mean? So if you are the strong and silent type who's never been vulnerable a day in your life, what's going on there? You know, you're this man, there's a lot of jokes online about dads, and when the dad comes home, all the kids run away from the sitting room and everyone scatters to their room. Like, why do you want to be that kind of father? You know, the conditions for that could have been warranted in your granddad's time or in your dad's time, where, you know, the dad came home from a terrible war and they were suffering terrible mental scars, so nobody needed to be around them, so they just scattered. But now those things are not happening, but you're still reenacting how your dad acted around his home. Please question, why are the chicken legs getting tied in this house? I hope you remember my analogy from earlier. It's not mine, it's something I've seen somewhere. But yeah, communication helps people feel respected, feels comfortable. It strengthens the whole relationship. Like, and I'm talking whether or not this is something new, like the relationship is new, or even you've been going in this marriage for years and years and years, and you're just thinking, you know what, let's reevaluate what's going on here. Why are we doing Monday to Sunday in the same fashion? Like, can we question what we're doing? Are you happy here? What can we do to make each other happier? These things are also important because life goes by in a flash. Like, lads, it's coming to May. I'm sorry, but wasn't it Christmas 3 weeks ago? What's going on? So you can really autopilot your way through relationships if you don't communicate, or if you don't ask questions, if you don't challenge the way that things are done. Because I guess we are creatures of habit at the end of the day. Like, we just sit and settle into things that we have been told or taught. And we also, like in a relationship, you teach each other unhealthy little things or even healthy little things without questioning it. So if you've gone so far into a marriage, I would say it's a better time to question, what are we doing here? Why are we doing it? Do we like it? Great. We don't like it? Okay, let's adapt. What do we do now? You know, it's challenging things such as, like, who initiates contacts, who plans the dates, how are decisions made in this relationship? Because you could enter a relationship thinking that, oh, the man's the leader, right? But they could be a terrible planner. Right? They could be an absolute scatterbrained person, and then you as the wife are the most organized person, but you give up that skill in yourself because you've been raised to think the man must lead the home. But if you have that conversation and be like, actually, I'm really good at organizing, let me plan the dates, let me plan the finances, like, let me do that, and then he can shine with strength elsewhere. You know, you don't have to come and tell everyone, like, in my house I do this, because again, it's no one's business. But what I'm saying is, if you communicate and you establish a mutual understanding of what each other's strengths are without looking to the outside world to be like, these are a man's strengths and these are the woman's strengths, so let's act out this behavior. Like, yes, life is a stage, but you know, your home is your life. You're not acting for anyone in the home. So don't take those templates of this is how a man behaves, this is how a woman behaves, and you bring it home. You know, examine both of you and be like, what are your strengths? There could be traditionally those male strengths, or there could be those female strengths. I don't feel like, you know, there is some inherent strength between strength differences between men and women, obviously physically, right? But I'm talking about, like, mentally, all those things that take that you need to run a life together. I think that revisiting those, reevaluating, why are you the person doing this in our relationship? Is it because you've just fallen into it? Is it because you are good at it? Or is it because you think that you should be doing this thing? I think it's very important to question that in your love life. I mean, even in your other lives. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what your life is like, but certainly establishing who's good at what and why they're good at that is better than just being like, no, actually, traditionally, I'll be doing this, and traditionally, you should be doing that, because that doesn't make anyone happy. Oh, I'm sure it makes some people would be happy with it. Absolutely. Like, I'm not trying to say that everything should change and, you know, modern society is the way to go. No, I'm just saying, look at yourselves in a vacuum, right? Because people are not in your relationship, people are not in your marriage. It's just the two of you. So you can decide to put whatever lens that you want to put on that relationship. But I would say that it would be highly beneficial for your relationship if you did examine, why are we moving forward in these roles that we have set for ourselves? Who even set these roles? Am I even good at this role, or am I just there? Because we've all been to work. You know, sometimes you have a manager and you're like, how are you a manager of people? This is wild, right? And you find that actually they've just moved up the ranks, not really specifically good at managing people, but perhaps really good at paper, like on paper. So of course on paper they get promoted, but they can't actually interact with people. And that's what I'm talking about when you find yourself in a certain role that you're not actually good for, but you're just there because of whatever reason. So question those things in your relationship. And I guess by prioritizing these kinds of communications, you set boundaries that are filled with mutual respect, filled with understanding, rather than just adhering to outdated gender stereotypes. And again, caveat, I'm not saying that every single stereotype is outdated or every single gender role is outdated. Absolutely not. I'm saying this is an individual to individual basis. Don't just take the template and run with it. And I've said this before about if you have if you think about your relationship as a book, you have to write your own love book, your own love book. You have to write your own love story, right? You can't just pick up a book from the shelf and be like, okay, this is a book about love. This is how I'm going to act out my relationship. Absolutely not, because two people are very different people. One person is an individual and then another person is an individual. So coming together, it's always going to be a different story. So if you're writing that story of your love, be armed with as much information as possible. Just like you would be writing an essay, get all the references that you can possibly find before you sit down and be like, this is what I want this book to look like. The same with your life. Don't just walk into your life blindly and be like, well, this is what life is. No, ask questions, read books, speak to each other, be open. And if you do come to the conclusion that actually the traditional sense of life is the one that's for us, I'm happy for you. Then go for it. Then that means that you will have a very happy relationship rather than like holding each other back in certain ways that you didn't really think about. And I guess that's the benefit of looking at it in a modern lens in terms of how flexible this new world has become, where if you really wanted to, you could become a stay-at-home husband. But in what sense are you getting that community support that your granddad got when he said, I'm gonna go and sow my seeds and I'm gonna get on the streets? I think society isn't quite as ready for a house husband as maybe they are for a working woman, right? And I think, again, we can challenge that. Do you know what I mean? If your friend said to you, my husband is going to be a stay-at-home husband, what's your first reaction? Question that. Why is that so jarring to you? And examine that and know that if you can't be a stay-at-home wife because your man doesn't make enough to give you the lifestyle that you can afford, but you, on the other hand, this other wife can, support that. It doesn't have to be for you, but you certainly don't have to like roll your eyes and laugh about it, or all those different things that we do. So I think women are just as bad at enforcing stereotypes or enforcing maybe the rule of law. And I think sometimes we can just throw out blanket statements like, the patriarchy and men of this and men of that and men of that. But I think that even women have been conditioned to think of things in such a straightforward sort of way. And I think that challenging that is very, very important, not just in like dating scenarios, but in everything. Life is nuanced. There's so many aspects to examine about your life. So don't also be trapped by the way of thinking that you think, this is the way, and not challenge why that could be the way. And I guess many people now obviously reject the idea that certain behaviors are inherently masculine or feminine. I don't want to get into what that means for certain people, but I think at the end of the day, what this means is prioritizing your like authentic self within these gender roles. I think that there are roles that need to be played, absolutely, but I think that knowing that you're playing the role to the best of your ability and not just because you have to is what would make any relationship kind of flourish. I guess, flourish. Why not? Previously I was speaking about when your grandmother was dating, she was never really the one to go and ask for a date. But now in modern society, women are fully more assertive. There's apps that women are the ones who go forward to be like, I'm the one who can ask the question, and some men are going on those same apps so that they can be the ones to be asked out by a woman. So are you prepared for that world? And if you're not, why not? Like, why not? Are you prepared in your mind for the love of your life, or maybe just any woman, to approach you and be like, let me buy you a drink? Are you going to be put off by that? Is that too much for you? You know, and the same respect, if your wife turns around and says, I want you to be a stay-at-home husband, are you going to be put off by that? I don't know. You know, it's up to you. Ask yourself these questions. Get intimate with yourselves. This is a family show. But yeah, like, I think that if you accept that society is changing, you'll have a better time of adapting to it, rather than sticking to your old ways for reasons that actually, when you examine yourself, you feel like, I don't know if this really matters to me or doesn't matter to me, but I'm going to hold on to it because X, Y, and Z. And, you know, modern society is changing all the time. And I'm not saying embrace change, embrace every single change, you know, absolutely not. I think that you have to use your brain a little bit and be like, this is not for me. This is for someone else, and that's okay. But I think if you don't approach subjects by an individual basis, then it's not gonna end well for any party. So yeah, I think that's my little talk about gender norms. And I think that there's space, I guess, for traditional everything, right? I'm being so vague tonight because I know that this is quite spicy for people. But I think if I was to end this show with one thing, it would be that traditional gender roles were important, and they were important for a reason. Are they still important today? Maybe for some, yes. For some, no. But on an individual basis, I would encourage you to focus on your life and examine what that looks like, and set all these roles out that you're playing currently in your life, in your relationship, and be like, am I playing this role because I want to, because I have to, because I feel like it should be me? Or actually, is my partner better off playing this role, and can we swap this role? That's my only advice, and I guess communication as well. So thank you again for joining us. It's still quite light outside, so I hope you can enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. I was going to call it Friday afternoon because it's so bright. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and have a lovely weekend. I've been Holly Moon. Thanks for listening.